Hello, everyone. I'm John Evans. Welcome to another episode of One-on-One. Charlie Daniels is known for one of the most famous songs in country music history, "The Devil Went Down to Georgia." He's entertained fans with that song and many others for decades. Charlie's new memoir traces his earliest childhood days growing up here in Wilmington all the way to 2016, when he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. When I spoke to Charlie by phone, we talked about his legendary music career, his memories of the city of Wilmington and growing up here, driving back and forth to Jacksonville to play those very first gigs, and the reception he received coming back to the city for a couple of special events. But we began with that brand new book called Never Look at the Empty Seats. Never Look at the Empty Seats. This is not your first foray into writing, but when did you get the idea for this? How long did it take you to write it?
Well, I actually wrote on this thing for 20 years or so. One time I would write on it for a while and put it up, and some months later or something, get it back out and start again. And then I got to the point it was looking like a biography. So I started kind of editing and trying to leave the interesting stuff in and take the uninteresting stuff out. Nobody cares about your second cousin's third wife. So, you just kind of prune it down and kind of stick to the pertinent stuff and try to make it interesting. And I got to where I almost had a book, but I couldn't find a place to end it until I found out that I was going to be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. And I thought, what a great place to end it. So it's from my earliest memories growing up in Wilmington, North Carolina, up to the night I was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2016.
Well, I'm sitting here in a studio on Shipyard Boulevard in Wilmington, and reading your book. You mentioned Carolina Beach Road, but I never really got a sense of where it is in this city that you grew up. Tell me where you grew up and what it was like in your earliest days.
My earliest days were on the Carolina Beach Road, and I'd have no idea what that address is. I was really young from there. And I started school at William Hooper Elementary School in Wilmington, and my dad, we moved to Valdosta, Georgia, on account of his job, his work, and we came back to Wilmington and lived in the city for off and on. One of the plants that he worked for was in Wilmington. There was one in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and they bought southern yellow pine all over the country, so that's what he was doing. So we were apt to be anywhere, Georgia, South Carolina, and we were in and out of Wilmington. I left Wilmington the last time when I was in the eighth grade. I was in eighth grade, and I left and went. I actually finished all my schooling in Goldston, North Carolina, up in the middle of the state. I actually got to finish my high school there. So I was in and out of Wilmington a lot back in those days.
What are your memories of this city, of growing up here, of fishing, hunting, doing things when you were a child?
It's totally different. I left in 1958, and all of this development has all come since I left town. I was there a while back, and I went to see my aunt, and I knew where I was, and I knew where her house was, but I couldn't figure which streets to take to get there because everything changed so much.
Yeah.
And the only part of town I really know my way around anymore is the old part of town down close to the waterfront, down that Market Street, 3rd Street area, because that's the historic area, and they can't change that. But getting the outskirts, I'm kind of lost anymore, really.
I bet I could probably poll most members of the Country Music Hall of Fame, and not many of them would know where Bladen County, North Carolina is, but that holds a special place in your heart, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, both sides of my family, my mother's side and my dad's side, both came from Bladen County, North Carolina.
And didn't you spend many summers there on the farm?
A lot of summers. I used to go and work on my uncle's tobacco farm all summer long when they'd start getting tobacco in, and stay till school started back again.
Now, I looked at your tour dates for 2013, and in March 2013, you're going to be playing Jacksonville, North Carolina. I imagine that will be special to you because of it really is truly where you got your musical start almost full time, right?
Absolutely. And that's 2018, I think you're talking about.
Or 2018, I'm sorry, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I started playing, the first real job I ever had playing music was in Jacksonville. I used to drive back and forth. I was working a daytime job in Wilmington. I'd drive back and forth 6 nights a week and play in the beer joints up there. And that's where I basically got learned the business, built my chops up and my, put some calluses on. And it did play a big part in my career.
And that's where the Rockets were born.
That's right. Sure was.
And can you talk a little bit about that? That was your first real band. Well, I mean, there was the Misty Mountain Boys too, but the Rockets
that was my professional band actually. But the Rockets was my first professional band. We're a 4-piece group. We had 2 guitars, bass, and drums, and we played the copy music. We played Elvis and Best Domino, Little Richard and Bill Haley and all that stuff. And we left Wilmington in 1958 and went up to the Washington, D.C. area, and I stayed around there for a few years, and then headed out for Point South and parts unknown. I was all over the country after that. And in 1967, I moved to Nashville, and probably one of the best moves. Well, it was definitely one of the best moves I ever made. And it was. I've been there ever since. Been there 50 years this year. In fact, 1967 till now.
You were actually WECT was when it first started was WMFD TV.
Oh yeah.
And you were on WMFD TV at one point. Talk about that if you can.
Well, there's a band called the Sandy Brothers that had a regular show there, and I used to play with them on occasion. I'd play on their TV show and go out and play road dates with them. But WMFD, the radio part of WMFD has been around for as long as I can remember. It's the first Wilmington station. I think it was the only one in town at one time.
It was, and I could actually say Charlie Daniels was on this television station before I was, and I've been here 25 years.
Yeah, I was on it back in, 50s, like middle 50s, somewhere around probably 56, somewhere along in there.
Can you tell me as a young man, what was it like when somebody like Bob Dylan told people he wanted you to play with him in 1967?
It was ecstatic. Absolutely ecstatic. In 1969, I went in to do one Dylan album, one cut, because the guitar player, the one he couldn't make that first session, and didn't like what I was doing. He kept me around. I went on to do 3 albums with Dylan. I did Nashville Skyline, Self Portrait, and New Morning, and it was such a shot in the arm. Bob Dylan's the kind of guy that people actually read the liner notes on the back of the albums, and he was always kind enough to list the names of the musicians. And having your name on a Bob Dylan album gave you a certain type of legitimacy that was hard to come by. So it was a very big shot in the arm for me. Could
you tell at that time what he was destined to do?
I was kind of floundering. I went to Nashville to be a behind-the-scenes guy, but a couple of times I've done that, and I found out that's not where my heart is. I mean, I love studio work, and I love writing songs, and I love all the peripheral stuff, but my heart is on stage. It always has been. It always will be. I want contact with people. I want to entertain people. So I wanted to be. I went through some phases where I thought I wanted to do another part of the music business, but I always came back to live performances.
Is there anything like performing live?
Nothing that I found. And I ain't looking too hard, to be honest with you, but
I can understand that. I was a 17-year-old at a radio station in Pennsylvania because I thought radio was what I wanted to do for a living in 1979, and they added a song to our playlist. The Devil Went Down to Georgia. I had never heard anything like it before. I remember where I was when I heard it. And that, to me, is one of those songs that I'll never forget the first time that I heard it where I was.
We still do it every night. We close the show with it every night.
I thought at the time that there had to be some kind of a story that maybe in a dream Charlie battled the devil doing something, and there had to be something that you got up that next morning and you wrote it down. But you're telling me that song just kind of came together?
Well, it's kind of a mother of invention type thing, necessity. We had written and rehearsed an album's worth of material for an album called Million Mile Reflections and gone in the studio to record. and come to the glaring realization that we didn't have a fiddle tune. Now, why we didn't figure it out before we went in and wrote one, I don't know. But we moved our equipment out of the recording studio into a rehearsal studio, and I had this line in my mind: "Devil went down to Georgia. I know where he came from." And we started. That was the seed. And we started watering it, fertilizing it, and over a period of 2 days, we came out with a song. And went and finished the lyrics and took it to the studio and recorded it. And as I say, the rest is history.
And you played 7 different fiddles on that song?
7 different fiddles. Yeah, nowadays you'd probably do it electronically, but then we did it organically.
And afterwards, reading the book is a story that I had never heard before, that you nearly lost your arm not long after that, right?
I did. Just for the grace of God, I had my right arm. I got tangled up in a post hole digger and a post hole auger, and it wrapped my arm up to between the elbow and the shoulder, and I had 3 breaks. I had skinned a bone out through the skin in 2 places, and the bone broke. Both bones broke completely into above the elbow, and I was down on my knees, and the guy turned the tractor off. It was driving the post road. I said, "Help me, Lord," and it stopped, and they untangled my arm, and we went and had it set and fixed it up, and thank God I'm able to play.
Now you were a man of deep faith even before that, but what did that do for your faith?
Well, I've had so many things in my life happen to me that makes me know that there is a God, that He does care about us, and that His Son Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And I've always been a believer, but I've tried the last many years to grow closer to God. The closer you get, the better off you are. And that's, of course, one of the miracles that happened in my life. But I've been shot at in helicopters. I've been, almost run over by trains. I've had so many things happen in my life that just by a hairbreadth that they didn't happen. And I know it was God looking after me.
In 1996, you got a call to give the commencement address at UNC Wilmington. Mm-hmm. Can you take me back to getting that phone call and what they asked you about?
Well, that was not the first time. I had been invited for several years to do the commencement. I went for at least 2 or 3, and I could never put the schedule together. We were playing in Charlotte that night. We had a concert in Charlotte, and it would work out for me since it was a morning service to come by and do the commencement address. So I did agree to do it. And then some of the students who went to school, because I have no academic credentials, kind of took it upon themselves to be very displeased with having redneck hillbilly come do their commencement speech. But I'm so glad it happened, because it spurred me on to do it, to write really good speech. It was my first real foray into public speaking, and I worked really hard on it, and I had it down. And when they called on me to speak, I had everything. I knew what I was going to do. I knew what I was going to say. I knew when I was going to say it. And it worked out really well for me. In fact, I got a couple of standing ovations. And, it just goes to show you, it's just one of those things like, never look at the empty seats, never listen to the critics. If you know you're right, just go on and do what you do and do it right.
Now, you wrote a poem to those 2 students. I remember it was one of the first stories I covered here. And I guess you had to put a face on it and be above board. But was there some anger in your mind when all that unfolded?
Oh, there's no anger. There was the thing about, I'd been out in the world for many, many years and had done a lot of different things. And I had some naive college students that were telling me that because I didn't have a piece of paper hanging on my wall, that I was unworthy of telling them, when I could give them twice as much practical experience as any egghead they could have gotten up there. And that's what I approached it from. It's like, hey, you're fixing to come. One of the reasons I went ahead and did it after criticism, you're coming into my world. You know anything about my world. You know nothing about my world. You've been living on mom and dad's money or college loan or something, and you're going to college, and you don't really know. You think you do. So I'm going to come tell you about my world, because you're fixing to go into my world where it's hard scrabble, dog eat dog, hog or die. You need to know about that. You need to know that everything ain't like it is when you go to class. Mm-hmm. You got a lot of hard choices to make, and I've made them, and I've done it, and I'm gonna come speak to you about it. So that was my attitude, basically.
And when you walked off the stage, you've walked off the stage thousands of times in your career, but when you walked off the stage that afternoon, was there a different kind of pride or a different kind of joy in your heart?
I was glad to have done that. It was a new venture for me. With speaking publicly, doing speeches. I mean, I've been talking to crowds in front of a band for many, many years, but I had never really gotten deeply involved in public speaking, and it kind of opened another facet to me, or something that I didn't really realize I could do, that I found out that I could do. So I felt good. I felt good about the whole thing. I was glad that it went down. It was it was a very small amount of students who were opposed to me doing it.
Sure.
It was not pervasive by any means, and so it was a pleasant day.
And the one thing you did not write about in the book was in 2001, you were enshrined onto Wilmington's Walk of Fame, the 10th person ever enshrined. Do you remember that day?
I remember it well. I certainly do. Yeah. I don't know why I did not cover that. Maybe it's one of the things I should have covered, because I'm very proud of it. When I go down there, I usually go down to the Cotton Exchange and take a look at it. Make sure nobody's took it out,
I don't think. No, there's no way that's going to happen.
It was quite an honor.
And do you remember that day?
Oh, yeah. I sure do. I remember it well. I had hillbilly cousins coming in from all over the place. Yeah.
Now, if I remember correctly, were there some people there that were protesting because of something on your website?
Yeah, there was something. I don't know if it's something on my website or what. It was something that they had read that they construed as being against homosexuals, and they were there demonstrating against me. So, I mean, but there again, stuff like that don't stop me. If you take other people's opinions, it's kind of like they say about coaching a ball team.
Right.
If you take the fans' advice, you're gonna be sitting up there with them before long. If you're professional, you know what you're doing. Go on and do it, and don't let these other things, bother you.
In 2005, you went on an overseas tour, and you had been a supporter of the military for a long time, but that seemed to really change you in a lot of ways.
Well, I'd never been into an active war zone before. We went to Iraq 3 times. We've been to Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkestan, and I don't know, some stands I can't even think of. I've been to Cuba, I've been to Greenland, I've been all over the place with the troops, but I had never been in in an actual battle zone before. And it made me realize that here's these kids over there that in a hellhole. You talk about a hellhole, a dusty, nothing type of a place, and these kids are over there protecting America. And half the people in America don't seem to be appreciating it. And I wanted to let people know what these guys and gals are going through, and they deserve better treatment when they come back. So we formed an outfit called the Journey Home Foundation, where we try to help our men and women who come back, a lot of them from combat zones, to transition back into civilian life, which doesn't seem like very much to us who are uninitiated, but sometimes it's quite a feat.
Well, that's one of the things I spoke to Major General Mark Gerganis for a previous episode of my podcast, and he had 37 years in the military, and he said that that's one of the things that he thinks this country needs to do better, is do a better job of getting members of the military acclimated to their time after the military.
No doubt about it. The need is glaring. The need for medical care, for mental health care, for such mundane things as cars or furniture or education or whatever. We try to help out when we can.
Do you remember a song of yours that you thought would be a hit that didn't quite do as well as others did?
Not particularly. It's kind of worked the other way for me. I've had songs that I put out. I thought Devil Went Down to Georgia would do good, but I had no idea that it would be, what it's been, what it's turned out into, and it's something that we're still doing today after all these years.
How about the song that you think never really even had a chance and became a hit, the Devil song?
Well, that would be closest to it, I guess. Uneasy Rider was kind of a nice surprise for me.
Sure.
That it did what it did, the first hit we ever had.
Right. Who was a performer that you'd would like to play with that you never got the chance?
B.B. King. I would have loved to have met Adam with B.B. King.
Did you ever have the chance to meet him?
Oh, yeah, I met him. I love B.B. King. He was a guitar player among guitar players. He was the man when it came to blues guitar, and he was a very nice guy. And he was a very classy guy. And he became what he became, and he never forgot his roots. He always stayed true to that Delta blues. Anything he ever recorded, it had a touch of that in it. I admired him very much.
Who do you like in music these days? Who entertains you?
You know, I don't really listen that much, actually. I like Chris Stapleton a lot. I like Zach Brown Band, like Justin Moore, and there are others, but I don't really listen to radio enough. I'm so busy with what I do. I'm constantly doing something, and I don't really take time to sit down and listen to music on the radio. But as far as my tastes are concerned, if you look at what's on my iPod, or not iPod, or whatever the heck it is we have nowadays, it changes so fast I can't keep up with it. You'd find everything from Mozart to Bill Monroe, you know.
Yeah.
It depends on what mood I'm in as to what I want to listen to. I put no bounds on the music I listen to.
Right.
I like most kinds of music. I never really got into rap. There's a similarity there. It kind of leaves me behind after a while, but most music I can find an entree into and at least appreciate the artist, the musicianship, whether it's something I want to listen to all the time or not.
You're very active on Twitter and social media. What do you use that as? Just a way of communicating with fans or stating your beliefs? What is your thought about how you use social media?
All of the above.
Really?
I'm very opinionated. I'm always writing opinions. I sometimes just write. Every morning I do a few things. I start the day out with a thing I call "Let's all make the day count." It's some little saying, you know, that I feel like the good Lord sends to me. That I say that let's all make the day count. I do a morning prayer. I remind people about Benghazi. I remind people that 22 veterans commit suicide every day. And at night when I go off, I always sign off. And what happens in between is depending on what's going on. I talk about current events sometimes. Sometimes I talk about past events or future events or just the way I feel about things. I write a column a week, sometimes 2 columns a week on social media that I call my soapbox. And, you know, it's just opinions. I don't do politics on stage. That's not what people hear about. That's what I have against the football players doing their thing at the ball games. You know, that's their workplace. I have no problem with the protest. I know that there are injustices that need to be addressed, and I think they should be addressed, but I think there's a proper place to do it. And I know that my workplace, at least, is not the place to go in and start spouting off your opinions about politics and things like that. People come to be entertained. They want to hear Devil Went Down to Georgia and Long-Haired Country Boy. And that's what we do. We do music. We do an entertaining hour-and-a-half show. And, you know, there's no room in it for that sort of thing. I reserve my opinions for things like I'm doing now or either my social media thing.
Right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today. Don't look at the empty seats. Look at the people who are here.
Absolutely.
Charlie, thanks so much for taking the time. I hope maybe we can catch up when you come to Jacksonville in March. And please have a Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year. Thanks for your time today.
You. God bless. Bye-bye.
Charlie Daniels' new memoir called Never Look at the Empty Seats is available right now. And if you look at his website, you'll see the 2018 tour dates include that March 23rd stop in Jacksonville, North Carolina, very close to Wilmington. If you know someone who you think would be a good interview for an upcoming episode of the podcast, send me an email, jevans@wect.com. And if you like what you heard in this week's episode, leave me a rating or a review. And if you take a screenshot of that rating or a review and send it to me by email, jevans@wect.com, you could win a WECT travel mug. I'm John Evans. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of One on One.